Hey everybody, welcome to another video on the Fisker Ocean. Today is a modification. I am going to be applying vinyl wrap to the front reflector that's right here in front of the tire. And what I'm going to be doing is using two different types of vinyl. One is a black matte solid vinyl and the other one is a very dark Headlight vinyl. I'm going to apply one to the left and then one to the right and see which one I like better. Overall, it's a pretty simple modification and I'll show you what's needed and how to do it. So let's get started. Here are the two types of vinyl that I'm going to be using today. The first one is by VViViD and it's an Air-Tint dark black film roll. And this is designed for headlights, so a really dark headlight tint. And then this is a VViViD matte black vinyl with air release. This is a solid vinyl that we can apply to the reflectors. It's on a sheet and you peel it off. I'm going to cut about the appropriate length that I'll need for the section and then make it easier, to have it trimmed so that when you need to apply it, you just have to cut off just a little bit of the excess with the knife. Let's open this one up. We have an instruction sheet here. Both of these are peel and stick. And as you can see, this one has a very, if I peel it back, this would be a very dark tint. So it's not solid. So if you do want a little bit of the reflector to show through, this would be your option. I figure I might as well try both of these and see which one I like better. And of course, this one being solid will totally cover the reflector and will match the surrounding plastic. One nice thing about purchasing this roll of the vinyl is that the length of it is perfect. It overlaps the length of the reflector. So I just need to cut a width of about 2 to 2.5 inches wide, maybe a little bit longer. You want to make it wide enough so that it goes around the edges on both sides. And then when you use the heat gun, sometimes it shrinks a little bit. So you want to have a little bit extra, and then we'll trim the excess off. Here's the roll. I'm going to take the tape off. There we go. So I mentioned I want to do about 2 inches or so. Let me do 2.5, which is roughly around here. It's not crucial to get exact because you're going to have extra that will be trimmed off later. So I'm going to carefully cut along here. And if you don't get it the first time, you can just go over it again. Not a big deal. All right, so we'll place the roll aside so we'll have plenty for other projects. Reapply the tape. And that's all we need, roughly this amount. And what we may want to do is, if you're doing this in fairly cold weather, you may want to heat this up a little bit so it becomes a little bit more pliable before installing. Right now I have a temperature outside of around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's actually not too bad weather to be doing this. So this is the black matte solid vinyl. And now for the tint. It also has a little piece of tape holding it on. And since this is a much wider roll, I am going to do the same thing. Extend this out a little bit and do roughly the same width. And there we go, we have the dark tint. So we have both of these. I'm going to apply one to the left and one to the right side, and we'll see how they look. These are the items today that I'm going to be using for this project. I suggest a set of work gloves, a t-shirt or microfiber cloth for cleaning, isopropyl alcohol for making sure that the area is free of contaminants. For the installation, I suggest a Kraft knife or utility knife, a plastic pry bar for tucking in the vinyl around corners, and if you wish, a plastic squeegee with a felt tip for applying the vinyl, or you could just use your fingers. For such a small area like this, the squeegee isn't really required. And finally, we need to have a heat gun. And in order to do the final heating so that it can be fitted around the corners and stay in place, that's what we're going to use this for. And for the right temperature, we want to use a thermometer, and we want to set the heat gun so that it's roughly 175 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. That's usually the optimal temperature for using on vinyl. And those are the items that are needed for this project. Let's go out to the car now and start the installation. All right, I just washed my car, so it's pretty clean. One thing you want to do with the reflector is make sure there's nothing on it, no contaminants or dirt. Even if the car is clean, I still recommend using some isopropyl alcohol and a cloth and just do a quick clean on the area. One nice thing about the isopropyl alcohol is it dissipates fairly quickly, so it dries in no time. So I will make sure I cover the whole thing here. For this side, I'm going to use the very dark Headlight tint. And what I'm going to do is trim some of this off. It doesn't need to be this long. So I'm going to trim it off right around here. And then what I'm going to do is peel the backing off. And that may be a little hard to do with gloves on. I am going to take one off temporarily here. Using gloves so I don't leave any marks on it. And what we'll do is take this and go to the very top and then peel it down. And what you can do is use the squeegee to help out with shaping it. And if we did this correctly, actually, I'm going to peel this off a little bit and try to do it like this. So I get good coverage on the left and right. If there's any bubbles, you can just pull it up. One thing is, on the reflector, there's some embossed lettering, so you may have a little bit of it poking through, which is not as smooth as it would be if it was just totally flat. So basically, take your finger in the squeegee and just push it along so it goes all the way to the edge. And then go all the way across. And when we get to the edge, we're going to try to bend it around. This is the part where the heat gun comes in handy because it'll allow this to stretch a little bit and we can fold it around the corners easier. Now you could take the Kraft knife and make some incisions, and that will allow you to fold it around the frame here. And if you fold this all around, you don't need to trim any of the back part here. This will all get folded around and then here to the inside. I'm gonna apply some more heat to this area and then make sure you press it down. The back side of this is done, so now I'm gonna concentrate on the top and the bottom and the front part. You want to be very careful that you don't touch the paint. So very lightly, and you can trim this off here. Don't worry if it's not perfect, because we'll use the heat gun to get the rest of this applied. All right, I'm gonna remove the excess tint. Now I got the excess tint removed, and now I'm gonna use the heat gun again. I'm going to try to get this wrapped inside here. And then use the squeegee to make sure this is all flattened around the edges. Don't worry if there's still some excess. I can just use the utility knife to cut off that. So for example, at the bottom, I'm going to take some of that excess off. Just be super careful. All right, and I can pull that piece off. Then I can also cut the section right here that is on the plastic very carefully. And then I can peel that piece off that's extra, that we don't want because it's on the plastic. We want this vinyl just on the reflector part. All right, and let me peel this excess off. All right, a little more heat gun. Last thing I want to do is make sure this is all tucked in up there. And the same with the bottom. So there we go. We have the right reflector with the dark tint. So if you look at it closely, it may be a little hard to see here, but you can still see the reflector through the dark tint. It just takes the very bright orangey part out of the way. And I must say, it looks pretty good. The only thing on the surface is there's a couple of indentations that are part of the reflector. There's a little bump here, and there's some little writing on the side here. But do your best to press it down and then use the heat gun to get all the edges and you want those to be all around. You want to push it as far back as possible so it surrounds the entire reflector. And that's it. So I'm going to do this again on the driver's side with just the regular matte black vinyl. Now we're on the driver's side of the car, and the first thing I'm going to do is use more of the rubbing alcohol, and I will clean the reflector. And by using this, you'll have maximum adhesion with the vinyl. Here's the vinyl, and I place it roughly around here. All right. I will peel back the paper. All right, I will place this at the top here. And I'm just pressing it into place. Make sure there's no bubbles. Folding it around the edge. Going to turn on the heat gun, let it warm up. All right, I got the initial adhesion around the corners. At this point, I am going to cut the excess off, and very carefully I'm going to cut in between, and I'm also going to put some cuts along here for the areas around the edges. And then I can remove the excess. And I need a little bit more trimming on this side. All right, I have the top and the bottom trimmed, and now I can fold along here. So I'm going to use the gun again. And then tuck it underneath best you can. I'm going to do the last bit of trim right here. There's the two plastic pieces that I need to cut around. Then remove those. All right, a little more heat. And then tuck the edges. And make sure everything is tucked around the edges. You may need to cut on the back side here, on these corners. All right, so when you're happy with the edges being tucked, you are done. And here we go on the driver's side. It is finished. This is the black matte vinyl installed on the reflector. We have the vinyl that is wrapped around the front and the back, and then trimmed and tucked on the top and then the bottom. What the matte black does is it blends in well with the existing plastic trim around the wheel arch. Let's compare it to the right side. The right side is using a dark headlight tint, and it has a glossy look. And if you zoom in a bit, you can still see the reflector through it. I'm not sure which one I'm going to choose. I may give it a few days and drive it around and see how I feel about it. But I think either one looks good. And for those people that don't want to see the orange reflector, this is a good solution for them. You can either choose the matte black or this dark tint as options. Let me know down in the comment section below which one you'd prefer. Do you prefer this one, the glossy dark tint, or the matte black? Or if you should just leave it alone and just keep it the way it was. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Any of the items that I used in this video, I have listed in the video description. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.